welcome back to Minnesota.
Thank you.
I know you have a very long relationship with the Minnesota Orchestra, so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how all that started.
Yeah, well, I was a competitor at that point, the Women's Association of the Minnesota Orchestra competition, and winning that competition in 1992, I believe, resulted in a chance to play with the Minnesota Orchestra at the Symphony Ball. I played Sarasate's Zigeunerweisen.
Great piece.
So fun. And that was my first performance with an American orchestra. And yeah, I mean, quite a thing to get to make my debut with the Minnesota Orchestra. And it was also, you know, this has been an orchestra that it had significance to me really from growing up. My father was a trumpet player. He was the trumpet professor at Brandon University, and he was a big fan of a lot of these older Minneapolis Orchestra or Minnesota Orchestra recordings. So I kind of grew up with that, with this idea of this wonderful orchestra, and had the chance to hear them on occasion. I've been very fortunate to have played with the orchestra on quite a number of occasions, and it's really been one of the great joys and honors of my artistic life to have this long, close association.
We are very happy that you keep coming back.
Oh, thank you. Always happy to.
And it's really been delightful this week with a second edition of our Nordic Soundscapes Festival to have you with us for both the Sibelius Violin Concerto and the, I think, lesser known Sibelius String Quartet.
Yeah.
So the Sibelius Concerto, I mean, for us violinists, it's one of those kind of rites of passage pieces and a real staple of the repertoire. And for someone who's been performing as long as you have, how do you approach a piece like that? How do you keep it fresh and interesting and moving to you, I guess?
Yeah, well, it's a piece that requires a fair amount of strength and stamina. So it's actually a piece, I think, that one needs to be physically planning for. The piece as a whole, I think, is actually quite elusive in a way, because there are so many temptations in that piece to turn it into something that is, in my opinion, not meant to be. I'm really lucky. Violinists grow up loving the Sibelius Concerto, and I get asked to play it. And it's like, I have to take that responsibility seriously. I know there are so many people that would love to have the chance, so I certainly never want to take that lightly.
I think this is only the second time that I've played the orchestra part here, and listening in rehearsals this week, I was struck not just by the incredible writing of the violin part, but also by so many of the wonderful orchestral textures, which is not something, I mean, when you're a student, you're playing it with a piano reduction, that's not necessarily something you're going to pick up on.
It's so interesting you mentioned that, because earlier this week, Thomas and I were discussing how wonderful it is to have a piece that is so full of inspiration, but is also really, really, really well put together. It's a testament to his control of orchestration, and certainly, you know, as a violinist, he knew the theoretical limits of the instrument and went right up next to them.
Yes. Speaking of violins, I know you've had the opportunity over the course of your career to play a number of remarkable instruments, many of them very old. Brief fangirl moment. I had Homage, the CD featuring the Holton collection. I grew up in a musical household. My dad was very into this, and so we did listen through it. And the amount of, I guess, individual personality that instruments have is remarkable. So could you tell me a little bit about your instrument and what you love about it?
Yeah, well, my instrument is it's a Stradivarius from 1715, and it's been to say primary instrument, I mean, it's been almost my exclusive instrument for 26 years now. But I still take every opportunity I can to explore other instruments, because it's sort of like, I don't know, I feel like having the chance to play on great violins, it's like you can steal things from them. Just these sounds that might be, there might be something that is a quality that is dominant to a particular instrument you play on it and you're like, oh, that's a really interesting sound. That's an interesting color, an interesting opportunity. And you take that home with you, and that, because it lives up here, and you're like, how can I find that on my own violin? It broadens your horizons to see the possibilities that are there, and then it's a challenge for you to find that on your own instrument. And the great luxury, I think, of working with my instrument is I think that it's all in there. The limitation's you. And if you find a way, it's not going to let you down. So yeah, I mean, I feel like my violin is a great teacher of mine. It forces me every day to consider the ways which I could be better than I am.
You've recently started teaching at the University of Indiana. How has teaching and working with young musicians changed or not changed your, I guess, philosophy of how to find the balance between that spontaneity and that high degree of craft, and how do you help your students find where that balance is for themselves?
Well, I try to instill the idea that our primary role is to be storytellers and communicators. That is, if you don't have that, then you really are not producing anything of value. But that being said, you cannot communicate unless you can play it.
Yes.
It's just part and parcel of this music that we play, that because it strives for so much, it's very difficult to do.
Is there anything in particular that's surprised you about teaching?
Well, I mean, I'm in my second year, so it is a reasonably early, recent thing to be having my own studio. But I have been teaching for a long time, and I've been a guest professor at the Royal Academy in London for a lot of years now, and so there were certainly a lot of things I've gotten better at over the years. I mean, it's a skill that, like anything else, it takes work and practice, and I hope that I'm able to offer my students more every time I see them. I certainly, in my situation, my students they're all grad students, they're all quite far along in their journeys. It's neither my place nor a good idea for me to try to impose on them too much musically, because they need to find their own voices, and they need to think about that, and they need to make mistakes and try out things that don't work, and understand that, I mean, that's what practicing is, right? That's all I do when I practice. I'm like, try this, nope. Try that,
Yep.
nope. So I try to give them the tools to find their own musical selves, and then also, of course, say, I've been thinking about this a lot for a long time, and have you considered A, B, C, and how a piece is shaped and structured, and where your apexes are and all that?
I have a few rapid fire questions for you of varying degrees of seriousness. Starting with, do you have a favorite sound?
Oh, I guess it would be my children's voices.
Do your children also play instruments?
My daughter did play when she was a little younger, perfectly content not playing anymore. My son does play piano and guitar and kind of whatever he can get his hands on.
Great. Favorite hall or performance venue?
Well, obviously Orchestra Hall in Minneapolis. Yeah. This is a great one.
It's a nice one,
I
yeah.
think, really, in my heart of hearts, I think it's Carnegie. It's just very, very special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful venue. What have you learned about yourself lately?
I've learned that it is up to me to separate myself from some of the stress of life. And I think I've learned that that I am easily addicted to being too busy, and I need to work on that.
That is very wise. What skill would you love to try and or master?
Master. I never practiced it, so that doesn't help, but I always thought, wouldn't it be amazing to be able to draw, to be able to see something and get that down on paper to share with other people. and I can't at all. That would be a great one. I wish I had a better facility with languages. I think that would be wonderful.
So, if you weren't a musician, what would you be doing?
That's a good question. I think there's a few paths that I might have gone down. I think that something scientific or technical, which is a pretty broad field, but it would be nice to be involved with something where there are answers to be found.
Music is not.
Music is not really like that. When I was younger, I loved sports. Absolutely loved baseball. I mean, it's like, maybe that's the answer to, if I had a skill that I could just master, it's like, I would have loved to just, even now, it's like my favorite thing to do if I can find the time and the people is just to play some baseball.
Okay, this is the Fantasy Chamber Music League question. If you could play any piece of chamber music with any group of musicians, living, dead, fictional, real, who would it be and why?
Okay. This off the top of my head, I think to play the Kreutzer Sonata with Beethoven at the piano.
That would be quite something.
That's a good one, right?
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
All right. What's your favorite thing to do while you're in Minneapolis, or something you like to do each time you're here?
Well, the Minneapolis with different seasons has different things to do. The last time I was here was the summer, and I would get on those, whatever those bikes are they leave around town, and just bike down the river for miles and miles. And I think it's that exploring that way is something I really, really enjoy. But really, I think the real answer is just spending time with some of the wonderful friends I have here, and getting to maintain these friendships that in many cases go back decades. That's very special. It's a great, great perk of this job that if you're the type of person that can, deal with seeing someone maybe once a year, once every couple years, you can just, kind of grow up with people all over the world.
Yeah, the music world is small, and it's always a question of like when you'll see someone again rather than
which is
beautiful.
a good reminder to young musicians out there. Be nice. Be kind, be respectful. These are the people that you're going to be around for the rest of your life.
Yes.